I'm gonna be,
Hello, guys, and welcome back to Time Under Tension. We are coming at you with a new series starting this week with whole being wellness, which is something that Dee and I are both like really passionate about. We, I think, have a similar mindset on this in that everything in our lives, every aspect plays into one another, and who we are as people and the quality of our lives really does depend on this interplay of different areas. But with our differing backgrounds, I feel like we have like a different approach to it, which creates more of a holistic viewpoint between our perspectives as well as to the importance of different areas in contributing to a whole life and how to approach different areas of life in order to foster that kind of wellness.
yeah. I think we talked about at the end of the last episode, just how significant it is to have all three aspects of ourselves incorporated into our definition of wellness. And so, us starting this new series will be a really cool way to kind of just show how we go about addressing each aspect and how even from last week, I think maybe talking about how when we're just focusing on one specifically, it really can drain our other areas as well or take away from our ability to stay balanced in whether it's you're super focused on physical and you're getting enough movement in, but you're not allowing yourself enough time to get grounded and regulated and pay attention to your mindset, your mental health, your thoughts and your emotions. And then at the same time, maybe not being as connected to your intuition or your spirituality in that sense.
Yeah, I've definitely run into that in my own life. I feel like there's certain areas that I love setting goals in, that I love pushing myself in, and I can see myself making progress, and they're a little bit easier for me to start implementing changes. But then there's other areas that I just tend to put on the back burner or think I'll prioritize those goals later. But what ends up happening is I develop an imbalance in my life. And I think the first time I really noticed this was when I did a assignment called the Wheel of Life, and it's a circle, ideally, and each spoke of the wheel is a different area of life. So financial, physical, emotional, relational, there's different areas. And you rate yourself along the spoke with like one being close to the middle, 10 being on the outside in each area. And then you see how would your wheel run? How would your wheel take you forward in life? And I found that, wow, I tend to be really low in certain areas. Like I always want to focus on improving my physical fitness, and I have no problem setting goals in that area and really focusing on that. That area is always at like an 8 to 10 for me. But like emotional well-being or relationships can be really low for me, and then it's an area I never address. And then because I never develop competence in that area, I tend to avoid it more. So I think it's really important with goal setting that it's not just let's find a good goal and go after it. It's like let's look at the whole picture of your life and decide what goals need to take priority right now.
Yeah, and I think my experience this summer is a perfect example of when you're setting goals in one area, it's not always going to lead to a successful, happy, and good outcome. I was super focused on my physical body, and I think maybe a step back before I get into that is having a good definition of what it means to be engaging in wellness of your physical body. I think that might be in the society and the world we live in today the most skewed. Um, I think there's been an awesome push for mental wellness. And I think spirituality is kind of a personal journey. That definition can be super broad. That's just connection to something greater outside of you. And usually, if an individual has that, it's pretty um, understood, kind of their personal journey with that. So, the physical body aspect and defining what physical wellness is was something that I had to relearn and re-understand. My focus, as I talked about in the last episode, was intense exercise and making sure I was staying physically fit. And it was rooted more in my body image, not necessarily in my body's wellness and how it was feeling throughout all of that. So what ended up happening that I mentioned on the last episode as well was had something called POTS, which is, partial or orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. And essentially what happens is when you sit or stand, your heart rate will jump from your resting, which was for me around 40 to, 100 just sitting, and then standing it was getting up to like, the 180s. And it was causing me to not be able to stand for long without potentially passing out, and left me immobilized for a little over a month. And what I realized from our conversation around trauma last um, last series was that I actually was in a freeze state without even knowing it. And that to me was where I learned, okay, yes, I had goals around my physical fitness and they were very intense goals. I was working hard, working really hard, but what I was doing was actually working against my body. It wasn't physical wellness. It was actually more or less me avoiding what my body was trying to tell me the entire time. So understanding that physical wellness for me and how I think both of us hope to shape the world in this way is that physical wellness is much more around understanding your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and how both of those need to be online at all times to create that harmonious balance internally. And if we're going to be able to access our intuition and actually truly access more mental wellness, we have to be connected to our physical bodies in this way where we're hormonally in balance, we're making sure that we're fueling ourselves, we're making sure that we're really devoted to rest and recovery as well as movement. Um, but understanding that our body is going to let us know when each particular thing is appropriate to apply.
And I think that definition of terms is really important. We often define things based on how they've been defined in our lives or society tends to define them. We talk about physical fitness and we automatically think about body composition, abs, strength, the ability to do an Ironman, but none of those things are really telling you about the quality of your life. And truly, in my mind, physical fitness should be about like vitality and energy and being able to be resilient. And as we get older, having the energy to show up and continue to be physically strong and active and reactive. As we get older, one of the biggest risks is falling. Falling can break your hip, and then that can pretty much end your life in a quick series of events. And that prevention of that through proactivity is important, but that doesn't happen unless we really define our terms and say, what does physical fitness look like for me? What is the actual goal? What am I actually trying to feel in my body? And I think each one of these areas along the wheel requires and demands you taking the time to define what that means in your life. These different spokes could be like spiritual, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environmental, financial. Now, that could pretty much encompass your life. And but each one of those is pretty much open to interpretation. So what does spiritual health mean for you? What does emotional health mean for you? I don't struggle with certain things emotionally, so I need to make sure I'm defining my terms with that. And I think taking that time is really, really important. So you have a platform from which to build really clear goals and then to direct your actions accordingly.
What I love so much about the wheel too is that if you were to take out one of those, you don't have a functioning wheel. You don't have a functioning life. So if you're just devoted to your physical fitness and thinking that that's going to be the thing that brings you this wholeness or this fullness, then it's like trying to have a car with not a whole wheel. You don't have all these aspects of your life that need to be taken into consideration to create this, like you said, vitality or overall wholeness that's balanced and can allow for our wholeness from an inner world perspective to really be able to bloom and become something that we then share with the world. It's, to me, if I'm going to go back to that same example about our culture right now in the world, there's so much less connection. There's so much less time spent with other people. And it's a lot more social media focused, which is a lot more driven by this need to be perceived a particular way. And it doesn't allow for there to be real conversation or real dialogue occurring between two people. And the struggle with that is that no one's getting this affirmation for who they are as people. They're getting affirmation for the way that they look or the life that they're perceiving to be living. And it seems more and more that we're chasing this perception or we're chasing this external validation of what our life looks like on a social media platform and getting further and further away from this is who I am and this is who I'm going to show up as and this is what I'm going to give to the world. And how to do that is all really understanding each aspect of self and going in inside and not outside to find these things, find these beliefs or these definitions of what we're talking about right now.
100%. And I think the more we go outside, the more we disconnect from ourselves as well. There is this like that aspect that you mentioned socially, we disconnect from other people. And then as we start comparing to other people, start disconnecting from ourselves, we don't know what we really want. And then we're creating this like parameter against which we're measuring our life. And you'll see so many people wake up one day and they're like, I don't like this job. What is my life? I don't enjoy any of my life. And it's such a shocking moment. And it often takes either that, we say like a midlife crisis, or a serious medical emergency, a loss in the family, a sudden divorce, spouse cheating, whatever that looks like. Like everything was building up to that event that felt very sudden. And I'm not saying things don't just happen suddenly sometimes. There are definitely tragedies that do. But I would say the majority of the events in our lives build up over time. And I think that if we were more proactive about recognizing what it is that we want and checking in with ourselves and aligning our goals with our values and aligning our actions with our values, and it being like this cycle buffered by constant reflection, whether that's daily or weekly, through journaling, through meditation, through talking to your partner, whatever that looks like. How are you reviewing and saying, okay, are we on track? We look at like successful businesses, they set goals for, say, the quarter. They have meetings constantly because they want to make sure everyone's on the same boat. Like, all right, does everyone know the vision? Is everyone headed in the same direction? Does everyone feel like they were able to give input? Does everyone bought into to the direction that we're headed? And then quarterly, did we reach this goal? Did we implement the actions to reach it? But we treat ourselves very differently. And I don't think we all need to be that analytical. I'm kind of like that. And I know not everyone is, but there needs to be some reflection process, or you have no idea where you are compared to where you were and where you are compared to where you're aiming to go. And really, if you're where you're aiming to go is even where you want to be going.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I love what you're talking about there. And it just reminds me of that concept we've talked about previously about radical honesty and how when we're going into whether it's reflection process or we're going into setting what it is that we want, having the process of true radical honesty in that is so significant because, I could have set goals prior to POTS and it was like, yeah, I want to be strong and I want to be, um, a certain, I want to look a certain way or like all of these things that I thought were going to bring me what we call whole being wellness. And it's so challenging. I know I keep going back to this, but it's just so challenging to truly begin to redefine the beliefs, especially when you grew up a certain way or you're in a certain world or a certain environment that is so focused on goals that are leading you more and more externally instead of internally and chasing this power struggle that separates us from other people. It's like when you're going into this process, I just think it's so crucial that you're taking in that spirituality factor of yourself and understanding that this is for something greater and we're all connected to one another. And it's about shifting our lens on the world from fear and doubt and anger and anxiety to trust and love and gratitude. That in itself, shifting the lens on which or asking yourself why and why until you get back to the true root belief, truly understanding if that's honest or not, or if that's something that's been taught to you or that you think will lead you to a particular outcome. If you're really honest with yourself, you know that a certain body is not going to get you that love or that belonging or that sense of fullness that you want. Money's not going to do it either. How many CEOs or billionaires have gone public about how depressed they are, anxious they are, how they don't feel connected to anyone? And it's like, that in itself should be a very clear reminder to us that chasing anything externally for power over another person or to get ahead or out of that sense of needing to feel secure and safe, that's still something that's external. So in this goal setting process of creating this wholeness, really taking into account what has led me to mental wellness, which is like peace internally and feeling calm and feeling connected to other people. What's actually led you to that? Has it been getting chasing this body or has it been chasing money? Have you really felt calm and less anxious in those pursuits? Like, be radically honest about that when you're going about this process, because without that radical honesty piece, you're just going to take like more and more of those hard lessons to actually get to that place of like, oh, got it. I need to like go internal and kind of defy a lot of the things that I've been taught or learned from this world.
100%. And that's a conversation I have with clients a lot when we first talk on the initial consult is, I mean, the goal I get almost every single client is reduce body fat and build muscle. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Now, what is it that you're really wanting? And then it ends up being, I just want to be able to go on the beach and feel comfortable in a swimsuit. Or I just want to be able to set a good example with my kids and show them what real confidence looks like. Or I want to have the energy to play with my great grandkids. And like, yes, that is a much bigger reason. And those are the things that really drive us. But they also help us separate from that external thing we think we need, because a lot of times that may be one way to get there, but if we're not fostering and generating and tracking those internal feelings along the way, a lot of times we end up achieving the thing and feeling really empty with it. I've had so many clients come to me and they've gone through weight loss journeys. They've had skin removal. They've had liposuction, whatever it is. And they're like, I really thought that after I did that, I would be really happy and have confidence. It's like, no, confidence is internally generated. Nothing on the outside of you can give you confidence. Like it has to come from within. And a lot of the things that we chase do come from within. But because we live in this world, we get to have this opportunity to develop skills and to develop competence in an external arena. So we might say, I want to become a leader in my industry because I want to help empower others. That's a really deep why, versus I want to, become the manager at this job. You could become the manager, but not be a quality manager. And you didn't really achieve that deeper internal goal that you never took the time to identify, which was you want to be an actual leader who empowers those under them. And I think people lose sight of like the deeper why, and then they find themselves achieving the external thing and feeling so empty and then questioning it. Or they go after one area consistently. Like I have a client who just works and works and works, and they like that's all they do. And they're super high achievers in their job, but like not emotionally regulated at all. And that seems to be the block. And they realize, oh my gosh, I'm not happy. Oh my gosh, I'm really frustrated. Oh my gosh, I feel really empty all the time, no matter how much I'm working. And it's like, because you're giving everything that you have towards your career. And at some point, those other areas along the wheel are going to suffer, and your body and mind and spirit are going to feel that lack of balance and rebel against it because they're not getting the nourishment they need in all of these other areas.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you bring those kinds of examples up because I think they can be really relatable to people listening. And I think the more and more that we talk about within, that's really the biggest indicator of all of this. This big significant piece of whole being wellness is that it's internal, all of it. It's our mind, which is internal. It's our body, which is internal. It's what is our body saying to us? How can we listen to what it's saying to us? How do we get connected to our actual inner world? And then obviously spirituality is it's like our heart. It's our intuition. It's where we find our sense of self. And so all of those things are coming from inside that again, that balance piece is really what I think we're trying to hone in here with whole being wellness is really the balance of the three. And it's not going to be this fixed, balanced like pie, It's like there are going to be times where, you know, you need to focus more on your mental health or your mental wellness because you've reached this, we call it leveling up in our relationship. Like we leveled up, like we uncovered a deeper um, root, like that next step of uncovering that, whether it's behavior modification or a habit or an addiction, we want to change, like whatever the thought pattern. The thing is like we'll learn something, but then we learn that we'll level up and learn the next step. And a lot of the times when we're in one of those growth seasons, it's really monumental to the process that we're really devoting a lot of that time to our mental wellness and our spiritual wellness and understanding that that's stress that we're under because we're working through some trauma is going to be very stressful on the body. And so we're going to have to move less, like be very particular about what kind of movement is restorative, what kind of movement is really helping our body have enough energy to fight whether it's you want to call them demons or fight the thought patterns or have enough energy to be working through that deeper rooted truth that's or false truth that has held on to you for so long. There's going to be times where it has to kind of move around and you'll have that equilibrium at it. You'll find that homeostasis, set point where everything's in balance and you feel very joyful and you feel like you're in a flow state constantly, but that's not life all the time. So it's addressing, which part of that really needs my attention right now for me to get back to that restorative place.
100%. Like to me, balance is something we create from day to day, and it's not a state we live in. There are seasons, like you're saying, where we are in a flow state more and things are just feeling good. We have an awesome week and everything seems to go well, and we, really showed up in our relationships and we stuck to our habits. And those are awesome weeks, and we need to celebrate those. Those are big wins, and that's important. Like we get to do those little running starts sometimes, but when things hit, like that balancing act is like, okay, we're balancing, but then life throws us something, we have to like balance again. And then life throws us something, we got to balance again. And we got to like tap into our resources and get someone else to help us balance or get external accountability or get a therapist. Or how do you utilize your resources to help maintain that balance as much as possible? And then what reflection process are you using to see, oh, I've been out of balance and I'm tilting in this one direction constantly? Because what often happens for me is like when I get out of balance, I start leaning towards behaviors that don't serve me. Like I start slamming caffeine, and then I'm like, I got to get caffeine under control. And it's like, no, 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 no. Yes, but get the balance. Like that's where you're lacking is I'm lacking the balance. So I'm trying to give myself the fuel and energy to just keep going, but I'm like running at an angle. And if I could just like stop and reflect and figure out where I'm in balance, that habit won't be as necessary anymore. Like, don't do. don't make it an uphill battle when it doesn't have to be. Like find those consistent processes. And I think that's something we could talk about in the upcoming episodes, like one episode being on how to how to set habits that do serve you, and another being on like how to have a good and consistent reflective process to get yourself back into balance and to evaluate how you're doing along that path.
Yeah, do you think you could talk a little bit more about how, because caffeine's external, right? So I
Mm.
think it could be a cool little connection there that we can make for everybody about, yeah, there are these resources, outside of us that we use to fill the need without actually addressing what truly needs to be addressed. And it causes us to replace with something external. Can you just talk, where I'm going with that? You think you could talk just a little bit about, the struggle with that and why that isn't going to lead to, any sort of restorative or um, even it might even take you further away from the balance.
Yeah, you know, there are tools out there and there's different drugs and there's different substances and people will use them and abuse them and promote them. And I think there are things we can use as tools, but when you start to rely on something to keep you in a certain state, I think it's important to stop and reflect on your intentions. We talked about this a few times this week because caffeine has been a big struggle for me, but it's not really the amount of caffeine that I have. It's the relationship with caffeine that I have. It's that I feel very dependent on it. It's that I really struggle to give it up. And I have this deep belief that I can't function as well as I need to without it. And I fear the way that I feel without it. There's a lot deeper problems that come with it. But I turn to it for this external source of energy. And I've been reflecting on this over the past couple days because I stopped caffeine yesterday and I have been dragging, so tired and frustrated about it, thinking like I want this energy. Like, how am I supposed to function at this level? But I realize like me looking for that energy externally has disconnected me from the fact that my body feels really tired. And the fact that I've been ignoring that is probably going to lead to more issues down the line if I don't address it now, because I expect a lot from my body and mind on a day to day basis, both in the gym, on the mats, or at work. And I want to be sharp all the time. And if I'm using something external to kind of keep me in this state and ignoring the fact that my body is telling me, hey, I'm actually tired. Hey, I need a break from the screen. Hey, I need a rest day. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, let's just use some caffeine and like work through it. And I think I have a little bit of a belief about grinding as well. Like, I'll just grind. Like, it's cool. Just have some caffeine and push through it. And I can tell now that I don't have that mask of artificial energy that I'm lacking some energy and my body is feeling really run down. And what I found also is when I start to lean on caffeine, thinking it's going to give me what I need, like it's this external thing that's giving me the energy that I really want. Like that's a big goal of mine is to feel energetic. It doesn't really feel like energy at a certain point. It does for a minute, and then it starts to feel like anxiety. And then I feel like I start to do other things to help manage my anxiety. So, like when my caffeine intake starts to get really bad, I tend to often use weed a lot more as well because it helps bring me back down. And then I'm playing this. It's like I'm on this other balance game of like, well, can I get these substances right? And then I'm losing track of the balance in my life completely, which was the original thing driving me to this spot. So I think just getting back to like, okay, what do I actually need? What is my body telling me? What is the deeper underlying goal that I have that I'm trying to achieve by using something external? And what can I use from my internal resources or even the resources in my environment that are healthy to help me achieve that goal?
Yeah. It's something I want to add in there because, I think substance abuse is definitely one way to look at this. Other ways to look at it is that sense of control. For me, it's like a sense of control is going to take me out of alignment when I start to try to control food instead of really addressing, like, well, what am I feeling anxious about? Like, why am I feeling out of control? And sitting with that emotion is what is so massively challenging. It's so hard to sit with the pain, and it's so hard to sit with our emotions, but it's like it's not only scientifically proven, but I think both of us are perfect examples of this where like your emotions last for like about 90 seconds. If you can resist and really just allow them to be without trying to fight them or identify with them, then they'll begin to dissipate. You can apply one of the tools like a breathing exercise or getting present with, cold exposure, singing, dancing, things like that to get yourself stretching, to get yourself regulated. It allows you the space to process it instead of feeling the need to go to something external or to shift one of those other wellness areas into an unhealthy habit or pattern that has just felt familiar in the past. And for me, it's like before I had pots, I was in the same position. I was smoking weed a lot, and that was because it was giving my body that parasympathetic, that, restful state that it was desperately needing, but it wasn't actually giving me the rest that I needed. It wasn't allowing me to access REM sleep as often, and I was relying on this external substance instead of listening to my body say like, "Yo, you need to take a break." But that's so rooted in the fear. And so if you can figure out the fear that's kind of driving the behavior, that'll help you to really uncover whether or not your intentions around the behavior is a problem. Because I'm not saying if you want to have fun with your friends on the weekend, like that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when we're replacing the need to process that struggle, that even if it feels, the something I've read in the tools book that this just came to my mind, we can feel deprived in deprivation state is so overwhelmingly strong when we feel a particular way and we're stuck in our emotions. For me, it was like when I felt that emptiness, I thought food was going to help me. I just tried to rely on food to fill me. That's something external that I'm relying on to fill my voids. Yours is caffeine, weed. It can be literally sex. It can be another person. Like all of these things that we search outside to then try to fill the emptiness or whatever the emotional state is internally we're avoiding. If we choose to sit with it and understand that nothing in our external environment will ever be able to fill that internal world, that internal void. We remove the outside world. It is like it brings about this. It's the state of deprivation, and it's super powerful. It's when you feel deprived and you sit with that long enough, you will feel inside of you energy start to be created. They call it the black sun in the tools book, but what's happening is you're understanding in its entirety that nothing in your external world is actually going to fill your inner void or help you in your emotional dysregulation from a substance standpoint. If you're going to therapy, if you're doing talk therapy, if you're doing EMDR, if you're in a co-regulation space of with others, that is processing. You're legitimately processing in that state. But when you're avoiding processing and avoiding the pain and relying on other things to cover it up, that's when this tool can be extremely helpful. It helps you regain not only your mental wellness, but your spiritual wellness because you show yourself how strong you are. And you show yourself also that you are your own healer and you can create and restore that balance internally for yourself instead of relying on these things that are like a quick fix or the easy way out.
Totally. And I think that that's a good foundation from which to kind of build out this series. I want to challenge you guys to do the Wheel of Life exercise. It shouldn't take you very long. And I think it's really helpful. And I think it's a helpful tool to use every few months just to kind of reevaluate and see where you're at. And I'll post a link to that in the description below. But this week, really start to think about those areas of your life. Are you experiencing balance? Are you looking outside of yourself? And if so, can you start to implement that belief that everything you need is within you? A lot of times we think that beliefs are something we need to feel. And I think for me, sometimes I can't start with the feeling. I have to just repeat it and I have to keep implementing it when I feel the thought that I'm wanting to replace. So when I think, oh my gosh, I need caffeine. Today I was feeling that. I was like, I'm going to go into jujitsu and I'm going to be so tired. And I was like, no, I'm going to go into jujitsu and I'm going to be so sharp because my heart rate's going to be really controlled. I'm going to have such a clear head and I have all the energy I need within me. Like it's something I've been telling myself all day. Like I have all the energy I need within me. And I went to the gym and I was like, all right, I got all the energy I need within me. And I was just telling myself that, even though I didn't feel it. And then I ended up having a great jujitsu session. I had a great workout. I got through work really effectively today, even though I wasn't feeling it. So sometimes you're going to feel like you're kind of lying to yourself and just trust, like implementing the truth will totally infiltrate your cells and your brain if you do it consistently, just like the thoughts that you are believing now, you've practiced them. That's the only reason they feel right or they feel a little bit more comfortable. So work on that this week. Kind of notice those thoughts that might come up that are telling you need something outside of you. Challenge it. Sit with that deprivation. Think about that 90 seconds of the emotion. You can wait that long. Sit there and feel the energy build within you and then feel empowered to move forward, knowing that you have everything that you need within you.
Yeah, I feel like it all starts with belief in self. I think that's great for us to start next time.
Perfect. So, guys, fill that out below. You can print that off. Practice that this week. Really focus on those beliefs. Write them down. Start some kind of reflection process as well. And we will keep going with this series. We got a lot to cover. I'm super excited. We're going to be going through each of these areas, talking about like tangible things to implement in each area to help create some balance and some processes for just staying on the right track, staying goal oriented, and really moving towards your specific life goals and the kind of feelings you want to generate in your life. Thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, and we will catch you next time on Time Under Tension.